going to start from the beginning. So nice, we get to do it twice. Thank you for all your help during this Mercury retrograde in Leo. And so again, I am very excited to be co-presenting with Share Your Skills, or SOS, on We Keep Us E-Safe, your data privacy and security workshop. If you're not familiar with this material and these organizations, Share Our Skills is the one who is putting this event on. This org was founded in December 2024 with the goal of creating a community outside of bars in a mutual aid space. The Safety Series is a branch of SOS in service to that mission. And I'm your guest host this evening. My name is Luke Modelo. I use he, him pronouns. For those who need a speaker description, I am a tall, Latina, non-binary drag king. So I am all glammed up on this Wednesday evening. I'm wearing a tiger print artisan jacket, my Land Insider Support Drag Kings shirt, and I'm wearing pink glasses because I've been working on a screen all day and my eyes are tired. I've been a drag king of almost 6 years, and you may have seen me on Sunday as the first runner-up for the SF Drag King competition. Because capitalism sucks, I have been working in tech since 2015 to support myself, predominantly through user research, UX product design, and now as a web accessibility specialist. As a former chronically online person, I've learned a lot about how our data is used on the internet and how I would not like it to be used. And so I'm really excited to be sharing some of the information that I've garnered over the years this evening. At the end of this presentation, I hope that you will be able to identify new terms related to technology, cybersecurity, data privacy, and artificial intelligence, or AI, recognize the importance of cybersecurity in personal and professional spaces, and then implement this information and advice on your own. We're going to talk a little bit about why this workshop is happening, some helpful vocabulary to get you started, and then how to protect yourself digitally and in real life, and that's going to be the bulk of our content. I do want to provide some disclaimers before we get too into the content. First and foremost, I do not claim to know everything. Please don't at me, as I am not a technological expert. But what I'm here to do is to transfer my compliance knowledge training of the past decade into actionable information for our greater community and yourselves to keep us safe. I encourage you to take what you need and leave what you don't need. And lastly, a friendly reminder that an information overload is likely, so please remember that you can come back to this recording. Make sure you're at capacity. You don't have to boil the ocean, as the saying goes. In fact, I invite you to just ask yourself, what 3 things can you do this week from this workshop to strengthen your data privacy and security? And I think that'll be a really helpful way to start to digest some of the material. Let's talk about why this workshop. And to do this, I want to ask you all a couple of questions just to kind of get our minds rolling on the topic. The first is, how many social media accounts do you have? You might be thinking of your most active ones. I also encourage you to think about accounts that maybe you use weekly or monthly, or accounts that you don't necessarily log into but you still use. So like, I don't like Facebook, but by virtue of having friends who use Messenger, I still have my Facebook account. And then accounts that you've just like long forgotten but still exist. All of those are opportunities for your data to be used for monetization or for hacking purposes. You might also think about how many emails you have. I have a handful, which is kind of scary, and I use them for different purposes. But again, those are opportunities for data sharing that you may or may not be consenting to. In addition, how many applications do you have on your phone? While that number may be small currently, think about the tenure of your iCloud or your Gmail account and how many apps you've downloaded over time that, again, you might not have deleted, you might not have used in a couple of years, you might have not opted into the new terms and conditions that may protect or not protect your data. And lastly, how often do you use AI? Whether this is never, rarely, sometimes, often, or every day, multiple times a day, that is also an opportunity for data breach. So think about ChatGPT, Meta AI, Sonnet, Gemini, which is Google's predominant AI engine, Midjourney, etc. And so the point of all this is we sometimes don't realize how much data we give away every day. And normally this is fine, right? Like with data protection laws and privacy laws like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also known as HIPAA, we stay pretty safe. Unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in anymore. In addition, unfortunately, the people who get most screwed in this ordeal are often traditionally marginalized people. So that's people of color, assigned female at birth or femme-identifying folks, queer and trans folks, disabled folks, poor folks, people who don't practice Christianity, And we're not even talking about jobs, class, and immigration status in this. So some recent examples of how much data we're giving away every day. This is a screenshot from California Attorney General Rob Bonta that talks about a consumer alert for 23andMe customers. Now, normally in the right hands, 23andMe is a great source of memes, stories, maybe a cultural connection. And in not the greatest hands, it can be used to establish a blood quantum, provide quantitative requirements for citizenship to a country, and be of service to modern day eugenics. There's also the T app, which for folks who aren't familiar, is an app that a lot of femme-identifying folks were going onto in order to report problematic men, sexual harassment, and just keep each other safe. You had to provide a picture of your photo ID as a form of privacy when you signed up. And recently, it has been found out this app was vibe coded. That's a way in the AI world of saying that AI predominantly coded the app instead of engineers. And so a lot of security and accessibility practices were missed. Now, there's a large data breach, and a lot of folks on this app are concerned now with being doxxed or their private information being leaked out and used against them. Some initial estimates are that 72,000 images, over 60 gigabytes of data, including uploaded selfies, IDs, DMs, posts, and comments have now all been leaked. There's a lot more implications to that, but these are just recent examples that have come out in the news. And so if you've been worried or wary about the digital world, especially AI, it's for a good reason. Just, I think, 3 days ago, ChatGPT users were shocked to find that their private therapy sessions were exposed in Google searches from ChatGPT. And that is really scary because that's your personal information. And again, it sucks because with the rise of social media since the 2010s and the COVID lockdown of 2020, many generations of people, especially in the United States, are suffering from a loneliness epidemic and find comfort in technology. I also acknowledge that we as a society have really forgotten about masking, and the current administration just does not give two meep about it. Often immunocompromised folks have to rely on technology in order to stay safe and connected. So it is a really hard place to be in. And you can't trust everything at face value. Some stuff that has made folks really turn their heads and open their eyes a little bit in the news is that these links are being made more visible and undeniable between AI and our governmental bodies, especially in a world with increased Border Patrol and ICE presence. For folks who didn't see, OpenAI, which is the owner of ChatGPT, won recently a $200 million US defense contract. And I'm not sure if folks saw this news as well, but there were 4 tech CEOs who have been recently awarded by the administration a title of honorary military officer, which again grants them clearance to military data. So there's a lot of blending of AI and military, but not only that, but privatization of information. For folks who haven't been hearing about this or have and need to hear it again, the Trump administration is launching a new private health tracking system with big tech's help. And remember, oftentimes information means money. So we are literally tracing money paths, and our data is what is being sold. And so yeah, we are very quickly moving towards a world of surveillance, AI, fear-mongering, and more. And because we're so tied to devices on the internet, we need to protect ourselves online as much as in person. I do want to introduce, before we get too into the information, some helpful vocabulary. So some first technical terms, I'm using air quotes, are hardware and software. So hardware is any physical device that you can hold, see, press, interact with. Like think of material, tangible, concrete things. Software, on the other hand, is the underlying technology that's often built with coding languages that operates the hardware. This includes your applications or apps as well. And so your phone is a piece of hardware that uses software to provide the use cases that need to be fulfilled or the things that you need to do. When it comes specifically to data privacy and security, there are a couple terms that you should know. First and foremost is the concept of a data or data, whichever you prefer, subject. And a data subject is anyone whose personal data is being collected, held, or processed. So you, me, a lot of folks who use technology are, at the end of the day, viewed as data subjects. There's also personally identifiable information, or PII. And this is a subset of personal data that specifically is information that can identify an individual all on its own. So a really good example of this is your social security number. If someone knows that 3 digits, and 4 digits is a certain combination, they can identify your personal name date of birth, like it's kind of like a treasure trove of information. If we take the next step out from that, that's called personal data. And that's an umbrella term that describes all data that can identify an individual. So perhaps it's your name, right? But there might be multiple people in the world with your name. So it's a little more vague compared to a social security number. Lastly, this kind of like third outer ring is personal information. Now that's all personal data plus your device's information. So for instance, every device that you own, particularly laptops, has what we call an IP address. And that is something that says this machine is contacting this Wi-Fi service, is doing this purchasing and browsing history. Again, on its own, not very effective, but if you can attach an IP address to a name or an IP address to a social security number, that is the jackpot of all data. And so why this is important is depending on where you live, certain types of information are protected under law. So for instance, personal data is protected under GDPR. It's effectively a data privacy law out in Europe. And personal information is covered under the California Consumers Privacy Act, Privacy and Protections Act. So that is a statewide form of protection. And this is going to come in handy because as a data subject, you should know your data rights. Okay, a lot less technical, I promise. Some terms we're going to be talking about when it comes to safety involve hacking, which is the process of gaining unauthorized access to data in a system or a computer. That's slightly different than a data breach, which is an incident in which unauthorized parties access sensitive or confidential information. So you are often emailed and are required to be emailed by a company when a data breach has happened. That's someone has hacked in to do the data breach. And lastly, we talked about this with the T app earlier. There's the concept of doxing, and that is the act of publicly providing personally identifiable information, or PII, about an individual or organization. And the idea behind this is with data privacy and security, we can prevent or at least mitigate ourselves from being doxed or potentially hacked. Lastly, I do want to talk about AI, or artificial intelligence. My personal, mildly spicy definition is what used to be known as autonomous systems computing. These days, it's really a marketing ploy to drive up stock prices in companies and make things seem a lot farther along in technology than they really are. Some AI is meant to train off of images, so that's going to be like your DALL-E, while others use language learning models, or LLMs. And common companies involving AI are OpenAI, so that's going to be your ChatGPT, Ada, DALL-E, Anthropic, which owns Claude Sonnet, Google, which owns Gemini, and Meta, which owns Meta AI. And Meta is the umbrella company for Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Oculus. There's probably more, but they're just a whole conglomerate at this point. How AI works at a very high level is a user provides information and will also provide what's called a prompt to a model. So that's going to be a question, a scenario I want you to imagine, or if you're just having a conversation, it's some sort of chat, right? And that comes from your personal system, which is a phone, a laptop, etc. This information and prompt gets sent to a host where a model context protocol, or MCP, is initiated. So these models can vary by company and like tenure, so they often have like newer and more efficient versions, and have been trained on extensive amounts of information, legally or illegally, it depends on the day. And then whatever the model comes up with, that information is sent back to the user. And I often get asked like if AI is bad, right? And the answer is it depends. I think there are use cases where it is appropriate, especially used as an assistive technology for folks with disabilities. And a lot of times the truth of AI is kind of concealed in order to just generate more profit and more users. Surprise, surprise, late stage capitalism. But just know that for a single AI prompt that's writing the information, getting a call to the model gives you an answer and spits it back out. The amount of fresh water and electricity that is needed to do that thing, that cycle, is about 10 times what a normal search engine will do. So if you just type it in Google search, that amount of energy and water to cool the database and data centers is 10x for one AI prompt. Now multiply that by the amount of prompts that get sent per day. National health crises. So if folks aren't aware, there's a rural town in Georgia that now has no water within a 10-mile radius from a Meta AI data center because all the water is being directed towards the data center instead of the residents there. And in Memphis, Grok, which is Elon Musk's basically algorithm, effectively is producing so much gasoline from running turbines that the predominantly Black residents of Memphis are now seeing like distraught increases in asthma. It is a public health crisis, and it's also a resource crisis because, again, we're diverting water and power from homes in surrounding areas to this database. And realistically, if you ask yourself what AI does and normal searches can't do, the answer is not much more. So I say all of this to just like build general awareness. This is not an AI focused workshop, but if you do want to learn more, I highly recommend Empire of AI by Karen Howe. She's an investigative AI journalist and has been doing a lot of research on this. And also the AI Con, How to Fight Big Tech. This is by Emily M. Bender and Dr. Alex Hanna. Alex Hanna is also a trans woman of color, so support our community by purchasing her book. So when it comes to protecting yourself digitally, I need you to remember one thing. Anything for free, in air quotes, comes at an invisible cost to you. And that is typically through data extraction. So for instance, this just popped up on Instagram today for me, and I was like, I need to screenshot this because I can't make this up. I was asked to add WhatsApp to my profile because Instagram says, oh, isn't that great? We can just port your WhatsApp contacts and you'll be able to like find more Instagram accounts to follow. And again, if we can take a step back and say, oh, well, Meta owns both Instagram and WhatsApp. By connecting the accounts, they're going to have much more access to my data. And so something that sounds harmless is a money opportunity. And so we recommend generally not linking your accounts like this together. And we'll talk about this in a couple of slides. Just be aware, again, this notification seems really harmless. And that's where we get into potential data breaches or set ourselves up to be breached. So when it comes to social media and communications, two questions I like to ask is what's in a photo and what's in a story. When I say what's in a photo, my recommendation, if you really want to try and be data conscious, is to use a screenshot instead, because your original image comes with metadata. Metadata is all this information that's not necessarily shown in the photo, but is available as a form of data. That's going to be the time the photo was taken, what device it was taken on, where the photo was taken, has it been edited in any way, etc. So I will note that if you screenshot a photo, often a majority of that metadata is lost. However, you do also, if you want to be super secure in photo posting, want to remove the geolocation from photos. And that's going to be a link that's available in the checklist. When we look at stories, remember that your expired, even deleted stories can be brought back, whether that's through you opting in through like an Instagram story highlight, or the fact that the company has this information even if you don't have access to it yourself. Another thing about stories, and this is a big one that a friend reminded me of recently, is to refrain from doing those favorite questions, stories, memes, screenshots, and like BuzzFeed quizzes, like the what X character are you from this show? Because typically, in the context of like favorite questions, those are often security questions. And so people can screenshot that and then use that information against you or like as a way to log in to information. And then the BuzzFeed quiz is often your data sold directly to brokers to make money. There's going to be a theme here. It's either going to be data brokers or money. So you also, if you are chronically online or you are a public figure on the internet, might want to consider verifying your accounts. Yes, that does come at a cost, and by providing your ID, you're less likely to be hacked by other people. I know there's been a string of drag and burlesque artists who have had their accounts hacked on Instagram, and it's not fun. Like, that's how a majority of us are able to get gigs and are able to do the work that we do and be the artists that we are. We talked about this with the WhatsApp and Instagram, like, merge your accounts. Don't link your accounts. Please don't. Like, that is one of the safest things that you can do, because again, you're sharing information. So it might not be something as obvious as like link your account, but signing up with Gmail, that button, signing up with Facebook. So now, like, for instance, I'm in a weird bind because like I really would love to keep Spotify but delete Facebook, and this was pre-Spotify CEO signing up to like run an AI company. But if I delete my Facebook, I delete the entirety of my Spotify, and that's like 10 years of data for me. So yeah, it's just don't do it. Like, you will save yourself present and future by just like using an email, or even like a junk email would be the best. And lastly, you want to reflect on your relationship to social media and doom scrolling. This sounds like kind of not related, but honestly, the less time that you are on an app, the less data that someone has to take from you. So some potential ways to think about this are to time box it. So like for every X minutes, I will, just do this and be done to repattern our brain. Thinking about what resources you can move off of social media. So for instance, I've been moving on to like Patreon and Substack, again, more email-based than app-based. And as we'll discuss later, typically browser searching is a lot safer than being on an application. And lastly, just thinking about what you could do by not being on social media. Maybe you can genuinely rest or connect with someone. This is going to be related specifically to AI. So first and foremost, to protect yourself, beware and learn to recognize deepfakes. So these are AI generated content that can kind of like mask as just like normal creator material, but it's all made from AI. And so TikTok has recently been talking about this, where it's like getting pretty scary because an AI will take a voiceover from a video, take a face from another video, put them together, and then kind of create its own content based on what's in that model. No person involved. And then that also creates dis and misinformation. So sometimes with deepfakes, like tricks can be listening to weird pitches and voices. So like if it's an audio only, you can kind of hear different intonations that you're like, that doesn't seem right. It's probably not right. Weird fingers, 6 digits, melded hands, really good sign that you are looking at an AI generated image. And there's other things to do. So if that's something you're interested in, or again, like you're online all the time, a really good skill to have. Photos, this is particularly to the folks who get accounts banned for drag, sex work, burlesque work. Cover up places where you think an algorithm learns from. So that's going to be like your private parts, a fist maybe for protest, right? A middle finger for like, what does that mean in the United States? Start getting creative with your emojis and placing it, because that will detract an AI from like learning from your material. I recently learned this. If you have a voice recorded voicemail, remove it and allow the machine to do it on its own. I recently learned that that's how people have been training AI voice models, is just like listening to people's voicemails. And that is wild to me. And lastly, when using search engines, so that's your Google, Bing, whatnot on browsers, you want to type -AI at the end of your search to remove the AI assisted searches. If you're not finding them helpful, this is super beneficial. And if you don't want to contribute to the environmental impact that AI is creating, this is also a really good solution.
Corridor Digital has a great video on detecting deepfakes.
Hell yeah.
And text is a big one they can't do.
Thank you for that. Let's talk about our software apps and updates. So this is one that I have been really going into, and it's been fascinating because sometimes we kind of set and forget our apps, and then we're like, oh man, like why does this app have so much access to my information? And so you want to regularly check your permissions and just ask, like, are your apps seeing more than you want them to? So a big one is like, do you want an app to have access to your 20,000 photos, or do you want to intentionally select what photos it gets to use? And again, think about what happens if there's a data breach on Instagram. Is someone going to have access to your 20,000 photos or your 200 photos? And that's going to mean that you are in a safer position to have your data be potentially stolen. I also would like you to be aware of what's happening in your latest updates. I know that some people like to opt into these like automatic updates because they often forget, or people are like, oh, you're missing out on the latest emojis. I also like manual updating, and I intentionally wait a week because I think it was like iOS 17.3. There was a release, and then there was a fast patch like a week later because we're like, there was an intense security bug. We are so sorry, we messed up, and like all your data's been lost. And honestly, like I don't mind not having the newest emojis for a week if that means my data doesn't get lost. So that's really important. Obviously, that's personal risk, and like you will make your own decision. I'm not going to persuade you one way or another, but there are a lot of forums that like talk about, yeah, I just like wait, and then I opt into when I want to update my phone versus like, let me just continue to do it. I will say for my Android phone users out there, you do want to look at the latest release because Google Assistant was quietly replaced with Gemini, and they just figure everyone's going to consent to it. You do have the ability to go back and change it to Google Assistant. And I highly recommend it, just because AI is going to have a lot more access to your stuff. And yeah. And lastly, whenever possible, this is going to be a really big theme, opt out of biometric data. So biometric data is going to be using things like Face ID, a fingerprint, any kind of thing that uses your human body instead of like manual entry of information. Opt out, opt out, opt out. And this is true not only of your apps, but like when you're in physical spaces as well. So we talked a little bit about permissions, and so I just wanted to provide a little concept of like app seasonal cleaning. So like my application spring cleaning, my application summer cleaning, my application winter cleaning. And so making sure that you're taking a moment to go through maybe your most common apps at first. Again, like I don't want it to be overwhelming and for you to spend 5 hours doing this. But make sure that you're asking your app not to track your information. So when you first download an app, it's now a thing where they have to ask you. Make sure to say not to track. They'll say, oh, we're going to give you targeted ads. That really means that we're going to sell your data, and data brokers are going to be able to give you ads based on what we sell them. Not great. If you need location sharing, be really intentional about what apps you share. I know some folks really like using the health app, and they're going to need to share their location always. I play Pokemon Go, and I like my eggs hatching, so I set that as the only app that has like always set. But sometimes you're like, I actually don't need this app to always know where I'm at. We talked about this before, but you want to give selected photos permission as opposed to all. Or I think give selected apps permission, sorry, that's a typo, as opposed to all. So you want to make sure that your photos are, again, selected versus all. Double check, does the app need to have access to your camera? Does the app need to have access to your microphone? Because oftentimes, even if you're not, if you say like, I always give permission to this app to use my camera and microphone, even when you're not using the app, that app can still go in and hear voice recordings or conversations, or if you're using your camera to take a picture, that photo might be able to go directly to the app. So yeah. You'll also want to look at third-party apps, and this is for my friends who are millennials who use Facebook and put all those like third-party apps for quizzes and shit on there. Yeah, like from 10 years ago, they're probably still on there and taking your data. So please go ahead and go into the settings and check that out. I know I still have to do this, but I've been doing that with like unfollowing pages and just like content that has shifted, and that's been really helpful for my mental health. And last but not least, actually go in and delete the app if you're not using it. Like, why is it on your phone? Why do we have to even think about that? Okay, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and I do want to talk about the general hierarchy of internet safety from left to right, where apps are actually some of the most risky things that you can do on the internet, because it's like a straight highway for data broker information and for companies to like know exactly what you're doing. So safest to most risky, analog. And I know people are like, you're kidding me, and I'm like, nope, there is nothing better than pen, paper, and pencil, baby. I swear to you. Especially for folks who menstruate, like a period tracker, the best thing you can do for yourself in these crazy ass times is use a pen, paper, and pencil, and just keep it in a safe place. Because there have been known data breaches of menstruating apps, and it's just a scary time, especially depending on what state you're in.
Mm-hmm. What is dangerous about them having menstrual data?
Think about it this way. We are moving in a society where folks who menstruate or folks who appear feminine, be it cisgender women, trans femmes, are being attacked by men. There are also many states that are creating legislation and passing legislation against abortions. So if you are sharing menstrual tracking information with, say, a doctor, or you are getting an abortion, and again, there's a data leak, your PII can easily be connected of like, oh, this person has this cycle. And in a world of AI and surveillance, these things can be kind of like tracked, and they'll be like, oh, this person is most likely to go to Planned Parenthood on this day because of their cycle. And so, it's one of those things where you're like, this is literally out of the Handmaid's Tale, this is a conspiracy theory. And that's what folks were saying years ago about where we are now. And so it's really important that like we are always a couple steps ahead of where this can go. And also, like, as someone who used to have a period tracking app, it is not great to track it on pen, paper, and pencil, let me tell you. And I feel safer knowing that, like, it's only me who views this information, and it can't be used in the wrong hands, or like as a way to take contraception away from me, or to find me in a more vulnerable position, right? Like, say you're in a doxing situation because there's a data breach of a menstrual tracking app. Do you want a bunch of people to know what your menstrual cycle is? Like, I don't know. It might make you uncomfortable. You might be fine with it, right? Like, it goes back to that personal risk. One up from the analog would be a safe browser. I personally use Brave, but I will note that Brave uses Chromium, which is Google Chrome's framework, under the hood, so there's still some implications in that. Firefox is also generally considered a safe browser. Your next tier is a less safe browser, so that's going to be like your Google Chrome, because Google owns everything and owns all your data, and if someone hacks Google, then you'll get all that data hacked as well.
We have 2 questions and a comment.
Yes, please.
What makes something a safe browser?
Generally, it doesn't belong to like a major conglomerate company. So that's going to be your Google, Meta, Facebook. Google is actually owned by Alphabet, so that's another big one. Anything that has like a Chromium frame, and this is like more technical than you probably need to know, but also these are just good terms to be like, oh, if I hear Chromium, think Google Chrome. So it's going to be using the same data infrastructure that Google has. And so, if you're like me and have like 4 Gmail accounts and Google gets hacked, all that information is available to you. So it's almost like you're kind of splitting up your data and hiding it in different ways. The analogy that comes to mind is squirrels who like collect nuts during the winter, and you're just putting your nuts in different places so you feel a little bit better about yourself. But yeah, I would look at like who the browser is partnering with, what is their like current stance and foundation. So the reason why I recommend Firefox is Firefox also does a lot. I think the Firefox parental company is Mozilla. Mozilla is one of like the foundational accessible web folks. Like, they have a lot of good documentation, and like their philosophy is keeping things like safe and open for people. DuckDuckGo, again, is another good one. Brave browser is one that I use, but again, it's got that like Chromium stuff, so like use with caution. There are also web browsers that are coming out every single day, and some of them are a little more focused on like being pretty and aesthetic, and some of them are more focused on security. So I just recommend doing your research. And I will say, like, the downside of using safe browsers is certain apps will not provide browser support, or I shouldn't say apps, but like companies and websites don't have browser support. So recently I ran into an issue where I couldn't pay my utility bill because they were like, we don't support Brave, you have to get on Safari or Chrome. And I was like, oh god, this is like the lesser of 2 evils decision. So yeah, that is another thing, right? Like, you don't be afraid to use multiple browsers. And then if you do want to save your bookmarks, make sure you export it as like an HTML file or like a text file, because that'll be probably the safest to like transfer it over to. And lastly, again, the point of an application is that they can get your data to provide ease and access and be faster. I use all this in air quotes because that just means you're paying with your data for convenience. We kind of summarize this in that general hierarchy, but you definitely want to use a browser over an application and a safe browser over an unsafe browser. Again, apps have a lot more data mining powers than a browser, and so depending on what information you're giving, that's something that you can think about. In addition, for your search engines, I like DuckDuckGo over things like Google search. They tend to have a lot less data mining and broking practices. And on a laptop, this is a big one that I often forget. When you're clicking like links from newsletters or like product ads, make sure that there's not a bunch of like gobbledygook shit at the end, because what they're basically doing is tracking where you came from and providing that information to the website. So you'll see that often with like YouTube. It'll say like, oh, they found it from this search and from this channel. Just delete all that and take the clean, what we call a clean link, and use that to bookmark to send to others.
Does the advice to avoid apps for browsers also apply to desktop clients, e.g. Slack, e.g. Zoom?
Ooh, I do know some people like using the Slack website like as a preference, just because it like stays locally, like you're using one less tool. I will also say, and this is like my like work brain coming on, there are better options for navigating an app for like blind screen reader users and perhaps voice recognition users by using an app. So that, again, this comes to like the personal risk or like what is your lived experience. If it's like a work mandated tool, then I don't want to put you in a position where you're fighting your employer. I think there is also I think it's in a later slide, and if I haven't mentioned it, I apologize, but like generally if you're doing like activism work, I recommend something like Signal over things like Slack and Discord. Discord has shown that they will provide your information to the federal government, which is like not great to hear, because I know a lot of folks like got off of Slack to get on Discord because of certain like feature imparity. So yeah, I would say one, it's like if it's a work mandated tool, then like I would just go with what your employer wants, so long as it feels good to you. There are accessibility implications as well, so like it depends. And then if you're doing like kind of highly sensitive work, then I would definitely look at it from a security perspective of like what products do we know are safer and have less data breaches overall. Okay, how do I determine what to use from this general hierarchy of the web? Big questions to ask yourself. Do I need to use this web or this app, or can I use analog tools? We gave the menstruation app as an example of this. Ask whether or not you can use a browser instead of an application. So if you need the app, and that's totally okay, we're not playing good cop, bad cop with this, it's your personal decision. Just make the settings more private. And again, the more data that you can protect within this application, the more set up for like a secure environment you are.
We have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Any tools to recommend to clean links? It's exhausting.
Ooh. I feel like I'm either a millennial or old school. I do it manually, and I'll find, actually, depending on like your dexterity, I typically start from left to right because you only need like the first 20% of a URL. And so I'll find it and then shift hold or use my mouse and then delete the rest. And again, I will bookmark the clean link and use that to share it with people. I have not found a tool, but if you have any smart coders or engineering friends, I think that would be very easy. I don't recommend using AI for it because again, what you're doing is publicly making your search history available for the sake of convenience, but also log out and delete apps. I feel like I'm getting kind of repetitive, but again, like these are practices that we can get into in order to protect ourselves more. And then if you're like, I really just miss like being able to click on this 24 or by 24 icon or tap it, or it's got a cute little like icon. There's a hack, I think it's on iOS, I believe it's on Android as well, where you can make a browser bookmark look like an app. So if you're like, I don't want to go into DuckDuckGo and then go into my favorites and then click this, or I don't want to do I just want to be able to tap from my home screen, you can do that as well. I want to talk about networks real quick. So your network is things like Wi-Fi or any other like devices that you connect to in order to accomplish a task. Please be aware of social engineering. So I think a lot of us are used to phishing, which is typically done through email, and that's at like CEO@amex.com. You have this like really great deal. Click here, or just like, I don't know, Geek Squad will be like, here's your $600 invoice. Click here to pay it, and you like panic. Yeah, those are scams. If it feels weird, it's probably not true. But now things are getting smarter, and so we have smishing, which is like the same thing through text. My favorite one is getting like DMV that I like have outstanding tickets, and I'm like, no, I don't. Like you would have told me it's not through text. Vishing, which is a phone call, and spear phishing, which is AI generated. So we have all these things to be concerned about. And we'll get more into this also in the physical realm when we talk about this, but please don't connect to public networks if you intend to do private stuff. So if you've got a private, or if you have a public network and you want to like look at your bank account, I don't recommend doing that. For folks who use Xfinity, I feel like they're always advertising, you get all these Xfinity hotspots throughout San Francisco. Yeah, don't do that. Like, don't do your banking information on those. That's the exact kind of like public phishing that we're talking about. Public like data breaches and like just like a really not great way to expose your data. I do want to talk about finances, and these were two things that I found out through friends, which is really exciting. So I don't know if y'all get like the really weird pre-approved credit card scores and offers, but they're really freaking annoying in the mail. You can actually opt out of those because the reason why you're getting them is that your credit card data has been sold to those banks through whatever you were like past browsing history or past purchases. So if you go to optoutprescreen.org, you can opt out of all of that information, and like by law, your information is taken from those companies and you won't get unnecessary mail. And lastly, learn from a dear friend of mine. Please get your email associated with your credit score verified. She recently had someone from China steal her credit card information and make unauthorized purchases in a different country, which I learned if your information is like stolen and used in China, you have to file a police report with the Chinese police, or like the police in China, which is like a whole other language barrier in of itself. But these, I guess, like people who stole her information also went ahead and beat her to the credit card verification. So she had to like work with Experian, Equifax, and the other one that I always forget, TransUnion, for months to get her money back. And it was just a massive ordeal. It's something that is free. I think you either have to like fill out a form or make a quick phone call, but like this is a really easy one. Especially if later on, like there's a larger data breach, it's a lot easier to freeze your credit score. And that way, again, you're not having folks steal your information, make unauthorized purchases, and now you have a fucked up credit score and you're out hundreds or thousands of dollars. And lastly, here's some additional like miscellaneous ways to protect yourself online. For folks who haven't heard of a VPN, that stands for Virtual Private Network. It does allow some sort of anonymity, and basically what it does is when you have like your local Wi-Fi, it's easier to be like, oh, like this Wi-Fi and this IP address, when they're together, implies that Luke's home because Luke is using home Wi-Fi. VPNs allow you to kind of like mess with your, I think it's your IP address a little bit, and it'll offer some anonymity. It can also help you stream content in other countries. You did not hear that from me. One thing to also look into if you're interested, or particularly if you've been doxxed, is going for data removal services. So two that were recommended to me were Incogni and Delete Me. In terms of data removal, it does have a cost and it can often be expensive, but look around for, because folks on YouTube will often have affiliate codes that will give huge discounts. And so you're like, yeah, this person gets like $5 because of this affiliate code, but also I saved $100. So again, personal risk, ethics, do what feels good to you. There are also family plans. So like if you and 3 friends agree to like go in and like remove all your data together, sharing is caring, you can go ahead and split the cost, and it's often cheaper than like an individual plan. For password management services, I know some folks use 1Pass. I will say if your employer offers you any of these free tools, don't take them, because it also implies that your employer is going to be able to see your personal information.
Ooh.
And that's not good. I was about to do that with my employer. My friends were like, no, do not do it for that reason. Again, these can be kind of pricey, but you can opt into a family plan, and again, it does ensure that your passwords are secure. One tip I got from what I call my tin hat conspiracy friend is also refraining from quote unquote one password per service. So say like all of your health apps have the same password, all of your airline accounts have the same password, all of your social media accounts have the same password. That kind of sets you up, because once some hacker knows one password, they can try and use that for all of your accounts, and that's easier access to data. I'm personally a little guilty of this, so this is like my homework assignment after making the deck. And lastly, we talked about that seasonal cleaning on your applications. You can also now do that for Google search. So this link is in the checklist, but it's called Results About You. And you can give Google as much information as you want, but I will also tell you they probably already have this information, like your phone number and your email address and like name. But they can tell you what searches come up that have that information, and you can ask them to remove that search from the internet, which is kind of cool. I will also say, in general, when you're purchasing products such as VPNs, password management, go for a European company over an American company. And I know this sounds interesting, but hear me out. There's a lot more data privacy regulation in Europe, such as GDPR, which I have in my notes, stands for General Data and Protection Regulation. That's not offered in the US. So again, if you're gonna purchase something, try like European companies, although now tariffs are like really high, so maybe the cost evens out. But like Yeah, just the way that American companies are going, and like, you know, Sam Altman recently announced that like, I would totally give all of the information from ChatGPT to the federal government, and now your therapy sessions are available on Google. It's a bit slower of a deregulation wave in Europe, so that's my preference. Let's talk about protecting ourselves IRL. When it comes to hardware, that's that tangible, like my phone is hardware kind of thing. Avoid devices with IoT, also known as Internet of Things, Bluetooth, etc. So that's going to be any of your smart appliances. I personally don't know why you want a fridge with a digital like reader of what's inside when it's not accurate, but I digress. Your Alexas, your HomePods using Siri's, Nest. I don't know if y'all saw it, but there is nothing worse than like having a smart technology and then 2 years later the company's like, we don't support it anymore, and you've invested thousands of dollars into your home and you're like, well, this sucks. Ring, it's just, I think now owned by Amazon, is like actually the worst. So if you have Ring cameras, like just be really careful with like what angle it's in, when you're using the cover, when you're not, or consider replacing it entirely. And even watch out on Wi-Fi. We talked about, oh no, this is another qualm about Xfinity, and I have the link here if y'all want to read more. Xfinity now monitors your movements at home with its Wi-Fi motion detection, and I'm like, why do I need to know what is moving in my home? Like, that's some scary shit. And so, yeah. One thing to also note with hardware is that note that other people that interact with you can also be identified based off of their activity. So for instance, if you airdrop something with someone, they'll know, they're like, oh, these two phones are connected somehow. Or if you're sharing your location with other people permanently, which like happens sometimes on iOS, but they'll think, oh, like these people must have a tighter relationship, so maybe their data is connected in some way. I like to do what's called bundling up, regardless of what season you're in. So bundle up your devices. Consider privacy screens. They're available for both laptops and phones. I really like this if you work in public or you need to like take calls or like do that personal information. Basically what it is at certain angles your screen will look completely black to like people around you, but like when it's in front, like you're fine. I also like having camera covers for your laptops. Again, that's like, oh, if this app like Zoom always has permission to look at your camera, perhaps even when you're not using Zoom, it might be able to, you know, look and see something. It's kind of like in that same slippery slope as the Amazon Ring. I have heard folks say Faraday bags can be really useful. I will also say they typically are expensive and they are not foolproof. So, you know, sometimes especially when you start looking at like data privacy and protection, algorithm says, ooh, you're looking at this. What products can we sell you? Faraday bags are probably going to come up. Don't believe the entirety of the hype is all I'll say. When it comes to your physical health, self, use a hat, face covering, sunglasses, and or mask, especially in places like self-checkout. I don't know about y'all, it feels really weird in Target when they're like blinking that monitoring in progress, and I'm like, yes, thank you so much. I am not trying to steal, but it is really freaking weird how the camera is like this much in my face. I will also note that masking not only protects you from surveillance culture, but also keeps others safe in times of COVID and other respiratory diseases that are spreading. I do want to know, and I had a really nice conversation with a friend around this, which is the more that you cover up, especially at places like the airport and places where you're doing a lot of transportation, you do have a higher chance of being stopped. So for instance, I have TSA pre-check and I am always stopped because I also opt out of biometric data, so I don't have my photo taken at the airport. In the US, you are still able to opt out. You can just use your real ID instead. But I also acknowledge that for some folks, it is very emotionally and mentally taxing to have like an officer figure stop you and ask you questions. So like, try to be like mentally and emotionally prepared. And again, this is like a personal risk and lived experience question and just like scenario to run through for yourself. We kind of touched on this already, but like, what are you doing outside your house when it comes to like your devices and data? One thing that like I didn't realize until I started looking more into data security is to be very careful of reflective surfaces. So that's going to be like Windows in particular. I think of Windows on Muni. They can be used and like seen off of cameras and other surveillance devices that are visual, or worse, someone can like see the reflection of you logging into your bank account from your phone, and that's just like not great. So again, keep your personal information on a secure connection at home. You know, if you're cool with people seeing your social media feed, totally fine, but like just be wary of your surroundings. again, don't use apps that have sensitive information on your banking, like your banking account on public Wi-Fi or network data. Opting out of biometric data is one of the best things you can do. The least times that your face is available to a database, the better, especially with folks who have traditionally marginalized identities. And if you are not aware, please do not bring your phone or any kind of tracking device to a protest or anywhere where you don't want to be known. Even if it is off, your phone can still be picked up in different ways or can be recorded in different ways. So just, keep each other safe, please. And lastly, know your rights. So fun fact, in a recent poll, California is the strongest state when it comes to data privacy laws. That's because there are California passed legislation such as the California Consumers Protections Act and the Electronic Communications Privacy Act. Use that to your advantage. You are, I think most folks here are residents of California. So again, just be aware of the rights that you have. And especially as we see the dissolvement of the federal government and more power going to states, this is actually something that's advantageous to us. I think I've seen in one airport where they had a sign that said you are allowed to opt out of biometric data, which I thought was pretty cool, because for the longest time, people were like, no, you have to, and TSA officers were like, you have to. You don't. The laws have not changed. You do not have to. And there is a resource that I've provided in the checklist. They're an amazing digital and IRL activist named YK Hong. They have a whole series on biometric data. There's a little video clip they have of a script that you can use. And so again, those are the kinds of things that I use to help take off some of the emotional and the mental load. And then, it's kind of like going to the gym and using your muscles. Over time, you're like, no, that's my right. Here's my ID. What are you gonna do about it? Sometimes it's just people power tripping at their day job. So anyways, you guys, y'all, we have made it, everyone. So to wrap up, just take a breath. Thank you for being a willing workshop participant, for showing up for yourself and your community. Again, I threw a lot of information at you, some of it repeated several times. And I acknowledge this is the end of the day for a lot of folks. Make sure you stay updated so things move at very fast and furious paces. That's intentional. It's supposed to deregulate our nervous system. They want us to be afraid. They want us to be uninformed. So that's something that we can do, again, to take care of ourselves and each other. I like setting up 30 minutes per week, and I read save post. I sign up for some newsletters. So again, a resource we'll provide in the checklist that I love is Threat Model. Really awesome activist on Patreon. So she does alternating weeks where she does a cybersecurity weekly update and then a COVID weekly update. So you get to kind of get 2 birds with 1 stone. And lastly, stay alert. Often breaches and hacks occur when we least expect it, when we're tired, when we just don't care. We're I just gotta check this one thing. And that's when we're most susceptible. So, just stay on your guard, or if something can wait, let it wait. Thank you so much for attending. Workshop checklist is available as a QR code. You will also be sent this deck, so you can return to it. You can watch it you can read it with the recording. The checklist is also available there, and we can send the checklist as a URL as well. Note that I intend for this checklist to be an evergreen resource, so if you have friends who want to contribute other things, and we'll answer the question as well about the specifics of GDPR, because that's really good information for us to know. Yes, friend from the opposite side of the table for folks who are on Zoom.
Thank you, Luke Modelo, for taking the time to do this amazing lecture. And we really appreciate you being here. Thank you for taking the time to do community care with us.
You're welcome. Like I said, I have taken so many compliance trainings over the past decade as my eyes glaze over. But I don't believe that this information should be hidden from people, especially as we're moving to just a more technological society. And if we want to get astrological for a second, especially when Uranus just entering Gemini, it's going to be really important for us to keep our information safe, because that helps keep our community safe as well. Thank you all so much. Remember to take care of yourselves and one another, and hope to see you in community.